Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clements. This is a show that helps you deliver a better support experience to your customers, and today's topic is going to be just a ton of fun. That's just how it is. But before we dive into that, let's go ahead and meet the rest of the crew. Yeah, our crew. Okay, so while we're doing this, I've got to think of something really awesome to call Jeff. So first off, we're going to go, you know him, he's awesome, the gent from Automatic, Chase Livingston. How are you?
Hey, doing very well.
And then the always changing rooms and equally amazing lady from Buffer, Carolyn, how are you?
I'm well. We're having a big storm, so there's a chance my internet might go out. If so, hi and bye.
It's just the fun of doing the show live and remote. That's just it. And then the magnificent, always amazing, and just the coolest guy around from Wistia, Jeff, how are you?
I'm great now. I feel like $1 million.
I need to break it a thesaurus next time. That's where we're at right now. I've used all the adjectives I know.
It's been so long I don't remember why we do that anymore, but I do love it. Thank you.
Yeah, which morale boost, really. Just,
Love it.
It's probably like your payment too for being on the show.
I would have done it for free.
All right, so this week we're still in the whole theme of making your product better, but one of the things that Carolyn brought up, I guess 2 episodes ago, something like that, was that your support team is a good measurement of the quality of your product. So we kind of told her not to say anything more about that and let us get into an actual episode here. I wrote down the exact quote. Your support team is a measure of the quality of the product. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, how effective it is as a reference point. Basically, just turn the show over to Carolyn and us just sit back and listen for a bit. Carolyn, why? I guess we should start with kind of where you first noticed this. Where did you first notice that your support team can actually be a measure of product quality here? What was there, a light bulb moment? Was there just something that happened that kind of crystallized it for you? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So we had a bit of a product quality code red situation a couple months back. And it was sort of a combination of us not having the right data to look objectively at the health of the product. For example, number of bugs reported related to how many are fixed, or how many tickets per daily active user, or things like that, or churn, or however you want to approach how your customers feel about your product and what the quality is. So we didn't have data in place for that, which is, sorry, can you hear that thunder? There's also a pile of water on my floor. So that was the first thing, was the lack of data, and perhaps the lack of focus until we realized it. And we also had sort of a second piece of that, which was the fact that not only did we not have the data to track that, but no individual team or person was sort of in charge of it. Was in charge of ringing the bell if it felt off. So we kind of said sorry, this has gotten to a point that we're not comfortable. We're getting to the point where we're apologizing too much. We're embarrassed. We're not really being effective as a team. And the first reaction was kind of oh, wow, we had no idea. And that was sort of the moment that we realized until we have this other measure in place, the way we feel and the way the customer team feels going into work, and how effective they feel they can be at their jobs, and the resources that they feel are available to them, is a really good measure of the quality of the product. Down to whether this is going to sound really sexist, but down to whether or not the support team members who blow their hair dry that day, or if people are coming in a baseball hat and rings under their eyes versus the faces that your support team makes on a daily basis, like the average happiness of the face that they make is a really good measure of the quality of your product. Definitely recommend a more scientific and data-driven measure. But until then, or perhaps as a supplement to, that's kind of what I meant by that.
Wait, Carolyn, before we jump in, can you just do a little bit more detail on what the code red entailed? Like, not, you don't have to say specifics, but like what caused a code red?
I'm happy to give specifics. I caused it. It was just kind of a stop the production line moment, like I was hearing slowly over time from happiness heroes, like the whole happiness team was sort of getting more and more hysterical about how bad the customer experience was. And granted, like, yes, the customer team mostly only talks to the people who are having a bad experience. Like, yes, it does not represent the average user, but it represents a significant enough percentage of your customers that, especially if it is a significant percentage of your customers who are writing in, like if it's 0.001% versus 3%, then, that number is relevant to this discussion. But in our case, it was a number that we felt was relevant. And it sort of had gotten to the point where we had shielded the rest of the team from how bad things had been. And that was my mistake for not realizing that was happening and not giving advice to never do that. And so it was a combination of need that they were shielding the rest of the team. Like, they were saying, I'm not going to send 5 bugs because I know that they'll do the one that isn't the one that I think is the most important. So I'm only going to tell them about the one that I want them to fix because the other one's a quick win, and there's a potential that one will get fixed instead of the real problem. Or vice versa. I think they know about the big problem, so I'm just going to send through these little things to try and make sure that, like, at least something is getting fixed. And so I'm just going to assume that they know about these very fundamental, basic challenges of the product and not continue to talk about it week after week after week, whereas, like, that's not actually usually the case. So it was partially those two things, and partially just, like, being sweet and not wanting to say, like, hey, I know that you work on this all day long and that this is your work, but, like, sorry, like, this experience is not good enough. Like, it's really hard to do that in an organization, in any organization, especially if you value gratitude and positivity and things like that. So there was a variety of factors. I should have done it earlier. And the most interesting thing I think that happened, the most interesting conversation that came out of that was when I finally said, like, it's gotten so bad, I'm so sorry. Like, we have to stop working on all these new features and we have to do, like, a bug sprint. We have to address some of these quality issues. And the main reaction wasn't, oh, how dare you interrupt our product flow? It was, why didn't you do this sooner? Which then brought up the question of, like, oh, it was on me. Like, our team was the measure of product quality, and that had never been explicit. We had never talked about that, and I wasn't aware of that until was the reaction, was like, oh gosh, like, sorry, we would have fixed it sooner if we'd known. And I was like, oh, it was on us, and it shouldn't be. And on a more data-based situation, it wouldn't have been, and we would have had other measures. But because those weren't in place, and because it was never explicit, like, they were using how pissed off I was in meetings as, like, the measure of the product quality. So I started getting more pissed off in meetings and, like, being a lot more honest about those things, and that was a start. And, like, I would say to people, like, yeah, go talk to Kelly, and, like, if she is sitting in a meeting like this, then, like, things are bad. And if she's sitting in a meeting like this, then things are good. And, like, Once we have more data, great, use that instead. But in the meantime, like the face that Kelly makes in the daily product meeting is all you need to know. Did I answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. I just didn't want to jump in again, but there's like a million and one places I could take that. I'm just going to let Chase take it.
I was going to say, so Jeff, do you think this is any easier with Wistia? With Wistia, you're all there in Boston. You're coming to an office every day. You can kind of see those changes on a day-to-day basis. Do you think it is easier there? Do you think that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is with remote teams, you're not seeing faces every day. You're seeing Slack lines, Campfire lines, HIP chat lines, whatever. You might have, like Buffer with the daily stand-ups and things like that might be video-based. But yeah, how do you handle it when you're remote versus in an office?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I probably index very hard on the in-office stuff because I don't have the remote experience. But there have been so many times when a support person will be working on a part of the product, like helping a customer through a part of the product that no one has seen, I haven't seen in a really long time. And they're able to just grab me really quick and say like, hey, I'm just writing this email, but I just have to show you that like this link doesn't point to anywhere anymore because we got rid of this doc page. Mm-hmm. And like, we should be more on top of that. And that leads directly into like, oh, how could we make a process so that we stay more on top of these things? And I'm sure it's possible at a remote company, but what Carolyn was saying about reading the emotional response from somebody else that was actually not what I thought the show topic meant, but it's totally right. It just sucks that it got to that point. And I think to her, she kind of made this point, but I want to make it more strongly. Like, it should not be the customer support team's job to measure product quality. They can measure product quality. They're actually probably really good at doing it, but that should not be their responsibility. It should be the head of product's job probably to solicit that feedback, right? Or make sure that they're like actively listening to what's going on in the support room chatter. Because if support people are in there being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm dealing with a permissions issue again, like we have to fix this tiered management system we have in our product, and the product person isn't saying anything or isn't adjusting their plans to do it or not to do it, I think that leads to that frustration, right? There's probably the version that Carolyn was alluding to where you come in with bags under your eyes because you had to work all night because there was so much support. But there's probably another version where it's not that you have to do so much support, it's that you have zero confidence that the things that you're fixing now or the things you're resolving now are going to be different than the things you're resolving in 3 to 6 months. And as a support person, you're like, just bury me in pillows now so I can go quietly.
Chase, does the same thing happen to Automatic? I mean, Automatic famously known for the remote angle there. You're talking Skype chats and Slack chats and that kind of thing. Like, how do you run into the same situation there, or has Automatic figured out processes to keep that kind of thing from happening?
I think in some of our teams and in some cases we have. I think for me personally in Jetpack, the support team is still a lot of the measure for product quality, but we're working very quickly and diligently to make sure that that's not the case right now, and doing some big things and some big pushes to make sure that's not the case. But historically, I think probably across, I might venture to say across all of our products, at one point that's how things were measured. With WordPress.com over the years, we've moved away, I think, from the support team being as much of that and just using, some more data, as Carolyn mentioned, to see what users are doing, if they're having problems, that kind of thing, and then building a better product based on that data. I think with some of our other services like Jetpack and VaultPress and smaller services like that is something we're still working towards. And so right now we find ourselves yelling and getting angry a lot, I guess, to get the point across. But hopefully in the near future, that won't be the case either.
Yeah, so we talk about, you mentioned there, yelling, getting angry, that kind of thing. How do you're a support person, you've got the built-in empathy. That's what we hire for. That's what we look for, right? So how do you do that nicely? Like, how do you get somebody that we hired not to get upset at customers, not to get angry with customers, that kind of thing? How do you get them to convey those kind of emotions over to the team?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think maybe yelling and getting angry was a little too strong, but I think, yeah, in some ways we're all human, so we do definitely have, probably an angry or mad side, even though, we're essentially trained and conditioned to not get angry and be very patient with people and that kind of thing. But I think on the other hand, when it comes to our users and we see their frustration and feel their frustration, we maybe can sort of channel that into the discussions and things like that we have with product folks and developers and that kind of thing. So I guess, there's definitely a balance, but, in the end, we're responsible and are hired to take care of our users. And when, they're frustrated about the product, if it's not working the way they expect it to, then I think we're expected to convey that in whatever way we can to the product team and to the rest of whoever's working on the product we're working on.
Yeah, I know for me personally, it's a lot of like, let the customer's frustration show through, right? It's I think I've talked about it on the show before, but with Basecamp, we work in basically 6-week cycles, and leading up to a cycle, we usually have a round of pitches. Support will throw in basically our top 3. Like, these are the top 3 things that either customers are asking us for, or top 3 things that customers are getting frustrated by, that kind of thing. So I know when I go and craft one of these pitches, like I'm working on one now for some calendar enhancements and things like that, I find the customers that share my same frustrations and then make sure that what they're saying gets right into the pitch verbatim, right? Which is a lot of times is copying, a straight copy and paste from their email to me over into the pitch that I'm writing. And it's, really powerful when you can, like, when somebody's reading through, this is the frustration that customers are having, this is why they're having it, and oh, by the way, here's their exact words that they're using. I think that does a lot of the work for us. Yeah, part of it is like, don't get mad at me, I'm just saying what the customer's saying. But part of it too is like, that's my job to make sure that their frustration is known. And this is the best way that I've found to do it. Carolyn, so when we talk about, support being tired, exhausted, tired of saying like they're sorry about a certain bug, that kind of thing, how do you get your team to handle, like, I was trying to think of a good way to phrase this, and this is what happens when I don't have like all my questions lined out. So sometimes it's thinking on the fly. All right, so you've got bugs that are frustrating. That not every bug is going to be fixed. That's just how it is at the end of the day. So if you have, one of your team members that's frustrated about a certain bug that for whatever reason is just not going to get fixed, like, how do you keep that from just being a demoralizing experience? How do you keep that from that team member just being like, well, the thing that I wanted to die for last time wasn't ever fixed, so like, why should I do that in the future? Does that make sense?
It does. The short version is give them all the information that you have. Like, with the same information, generally people make the same decision. So it's not just, no, we're not fixing this bug, and tough cookies. But here's why we made that decision. Like, does this make sense to you? And 99 times out of 100, the person goes, oh, yep, with that same information and same context. So that would be the short version. Interestingly, like, for us, I think the challenge was that because we have these values of positivity, not complaining, like, people don't say, I can't believe I'm answering a permissions issue for the 100th time. Like, they don't say smother me with pillows. And so you can get it privately and eventually. But we've ended up with this culture of like a little bit of artificial harmony, and now we're having to work against that, and we're having to undo that. And that has been a really interesting exercise over the past few months. And I'd say we're like not even 25% of where we need to be on that front. Like, we have been battling this and saying, like, remember all that stuff that you learned implicitly from observing all the other people at the company for the past 2 years? Like, forget it. And trying to reward when people do say, hey, Jeff, this link doesn't point anywhere, and here's my suggestion for the process of how we can fix that, and like, do you mind if I run with this? Like, rewarding that behavior as opposed to rewarding the people who refund the customer every month because they had a terrible experience, but like aren't able to really do that. And just to follow up on one last thing, like to Jeff's point earlier, yeah, the bags under the eyes can be from so much support, but like support does not have to be a burnout job. It is though, if you as a teammate, in my opinion, are not able to effect change. If you can't effect change for the customer and for the organization, and you're just like apology monkey, then that's when this job gets really hard. But if you do feel like if you can say to somebody and be completely genuine, like, thanks for reporting this, we're going to make a change based on you reaching out about this, then that is super rewarding. So that is, I think, where we really ran into the challenge. Is it's not that there were so many bugs or that the bugs were so extreme. It was that they weren't able to properly, there weren't the existing channels, and we didn't have enough resources to really take action on that, because they didn't know, and so they had prioritized new features way more highly than bug fixes and responding to signals. And I think that caused a big backlog, which led to pulling hair and misery.
So much of what you're saying now makes the conversation that we had, like, whatever, 3 weeks ago, so much clearer, like why you were feeling as strongly about certain things as you were. I think the cultural piece sounds really, really tricky, and I don't really know what to do about that, except to say that I guess from my perspective, you don't have to give up on the positivity to get this. You just, sometimes people we have a culture of positivity to mean every time something terrible happens, find a silver lining and don't talk about the bad stuff. And I just want to make sure that if I painted our support team as if they hang out in a Slack channel just talking about all the terrible parts of their experience, that's not right either. I think that there is a culture for them of saying, like, hey, like, has anybody else dealt with this problem a lot? Like, is this coming up a lot? Because I keep seeing this, and maybe we should like bring this up. And somebody's saying, oh yeah, I dealt with that. Oh yeah, dealt with that too. And there's like this string of Slack comments. And then it turns into something in the product feedback channel that's like somewhat consolidated and concise. And we can have a conversation about, like, why does the customer want that? And I wanted to add on to something that you said about the person with the bags under their eyes around, like, they want to be able to say that they're going to make a change. And I guess to Chase's earlier question about, like, what if you're not going to make a change? If a change is not going to happen, the product team has to communicate why they're not going to do that. Because really, like, in so many of these cases, the support person just wants to be heard. And it's really frustrating when you feel like you have insight into like what would make the customer's experience better, which is what we all want to do. And you feel like no one's taking your feedback. And when you give your feedback and it's like, I totally hear you that this would improve the customer's experience, but we're going to take that time plus some other time and build out this brand new thing that's going to obviate all that, and customers are really going to like that, then you're like, okay, cool, I get it. I get what we're investing our time into. But if you're writing emails to people all day and what you see is somebody else just kind of brainstorming or hanging out, you know, having a meeting during the day, you're like, hey, like, it would be great if you spent as much time talking with customers as I did, because you'd see that this is a problem and it needs to be fixed. It's a very hard problem to solve around like the support function and other functions. I mean, I feel like that's where this show comes from. So it's cool that we can talk about it as it relates to this issue.
And I think too, our you know, we keep talking about the team, here being a metric for the product quality. A lot of times too, the longer you do this job, the more it's like the thicker skin you get, right? So if you take somebody like us who've been doing this, 5, 6, 7 years now, and then you take one of our teammates and throw them in on support for a day, like they're going to have more of an emotional roller coaster than we would. It's you see yet another login case where somebody can't log in right. Well, for us, sometimes that's like just another login case, whereas somebody else with fresh eyes that hasn't been doing this for as long would see that as, oh no, like this customer is frustrated like out the wazoo, and it's because of problem X, Y, and Z that we haven't fixed yet. Like, why didn't y'all tell us about this? So we have to make sure, I think it's part of the team lead's job to make sure that we don't just kind of insulate ourselves to yet another login problem, yet another like this problem or whatnot. Down to little stuff too, like so the thing that frustrates me to no end with calendar sometimes is that our customers like using Google Calendar, right? And they like taking things in Basecamp and sending it over to Google Cal. Now, the thing here is that Google Cal and all of its wisdom and infinite resources has this stupid 8 to 12 hour refresh rate. So that means from the moment like somebody adds an event in Basecamp to the moment where it shows up in Google Cal, it could be 60 seconds or it could be 12 hours. And we have no control over that, which is really, really frustrating. And when customers write into us, like that's a frustrating thing on their end too. So over time, it's really easy for us to kind of get cynical or whatnot and kind of blame Google here, rather than a developer that come in and for the first time did a support rotation and like, oh no, we can like fix this on our side. Here's what we have to do. So it's all that to say, you've got to be really cognizant as a team lead to make sure that your team doesn't get to a point where they're just like not feeling that frustration anymore, that their emotional quality here is several notches higher than anybody else that might come and do this job. I think that's one of the good reasons we do all hands support, why you should be picking the brains of every new hire that you have. Like, new hires are just as much a good metric for the quality here as somebody on your support team. They're going to be coming in to your product with fresh eyes and seeing like, well, why in the world does it take somebody 28 steps to log into an account? Like, that's dumb. We shouldn't have that. So the show, we've been talking about the support team here, but your new hires are good kind of barometers too for all this kind of thing. They're not ingrained like we are.
I love that about a new hire, when they go like, why do we do it this way? And everybody's like, so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially for support team, because I've been in this situation. I've been in the situation where you are so far behind in email cases, like the only thing you want to do is become basically an apology monkey, which, by the way, I think should be the hit follow-up single to Code Monkey. Like, if any of our listeners can make that happen, like, you'll get, I don't know, we'll give you a prize or something, like a free spot on one of the shows or something like that. Where was I going with that? Oh, when you get buried in the queue and there's so many problems going on, like you tend to like shrink in and like focus in, and the next thing you know, like you're trying to get through, Carolyn used to call it beast mode, right? You're just knocking through as many emails as you can using as many snippets and kind of stock answers as you got, and then nothing changes because, yeah, you cleaned out the queue, but you didn't really make the product better in any way. So I think it's real easy to get into that mentality especially when you've been doing this for a while. So team leads have to rely on, new people coming in. We had the same situation a couple of weeks ago. We hired 2 new people and they came in and they're like, why is it this way? And we went, yeah, because it is. Maybe, I don't know. So yeah, new hires are great kind of barometers for this kind of thing too. Really, at this point, I just want to work the word barometer into as many as I can here, because it's a fun word. All right. All that said, we're at the 30-minute mark now. Anything else that y'all want to throw in on this topic? Just because, and like Carolyn mentioned earlier, this should be something that is worked out with processes put in place. Like, this should not be you always rely on the emotional quality and did your team member blow dry their hair today? Like, that should not be a data point that you continue far into the future, but as a temporary measure, it's a good kind of thing here. I think we hit everything. Do y'all want to throw in anything?
Can we just add a topic on the list, or a show topic on the list, that I thought this was more Like, so
What did you think we were going to
what
talk
I
about?
read this topic to be is like, your support team can measure your product quality, right? That's like my takeaway from this topic now that we're talking about it. My initial thought was very similar to you go to a restaurant and your waiter or your host, the hostess or whomever greets you at the door, even the person you call when you're trying to make a reservation, like they are a really good measurer. They're a really good measure of how good the food's going to be. In so many cases, and I think I'm reading, I know I'm reading Setting the Table by,
That
Danny
guy.
Meyer. There we go. That guy, Danny Meyer, right now. And so that's why this stuck out to me. And that really your support team, or in some cases your success team, and in some cases your success team, it's always your support team, are a really good measure of the overall quality of what you bring, the overall quality of your like product / experience. So I feel like that was kind of where I thought we were going. And I think I would still love to talk about why that's so important, because I feel like that's very frequently overlooked when a support team is trying to get like another team member, or they're trying to get extra training or something like that for their team, is like, yeah, but also when a customer writes in, as they so often do when they're first getting started, support team is the first person that they talk to. That they're like excited to talk to.
Let's have a show on that.
I like it. We'll just do it next week, and we'll call it the show that Jeff thought we were going to do.
I love that idea.
Yeah, and I just want to plus one more time what Chase Clemens said about, like, if you beast mode and put on your Super Mario speedy fingers typing hat and like bust through 300 emails and you don't affect any change, all you've done is kick the can down the road to tomorrow, and all you've done is make it so that that's what you're going to have to do tomorrow. And we were doing that so much, but like tomorrow there's going to be one more. So instead of 300, it's 301, and then the next day it's 302, and like that's the point that we got to. And so yeah, I just really wanted to plus one that. Our CTO uses that phrase a lot. Like every time you apologize for something or give a refund, but like don't actually fix it, like all you've done is kick the can down the road. But down the road there's another can. So then you're kicking two cans, and like you can sort of extend the analogy. But yeah, that's a really, really important one to drive home.
See, there's a trio of monkeys there, if you didn't know. It's the code monkey, the apology monkey, and the Q monkey. Like, those are the three. And I'm serious. If any of our listeners can give us a nice follow-up single, it's not yet code monkey. I'm for it. All right, cool. So that's a wrap. That's our show. We'll be back next week talking about the topic that Jeff thought we were going to talk about. It's going to be a great topic too, I'm sure. Let us know what you think about this particular one, though. Hit us up, hello@supportops.co, or you can hit us up on Twitter. We're at supportops there. Get a chance, make sure to sign up for the newsletter. That's where all of the show notes and shout outs and all that are at now. That's going to be a great collection of what we're all reading this week and what we think you should be reading, doing, or whatever that happened that week. Yeah. See, this is what happens when I don't have like my show notes in front of me. We just wing it and see what happens. All right. Thanks again for listening. Until we see you again next week for I couldn't work barometer in that one. I really tried. Until we see you again next week, just have an awesome week.